Hey guys, Chris from the Ultimate Recycler. I'm in my shed. I've got about an hour or two spare and I'm going to tackle another quick unboxing because if I don't do this, I'll never get on top of all this. So we're going out to my emergency shed here, which we built when I had to move the shop. And if you look behind me, that stuff is piled to the roof and it goes back about 30 feet. It's a fair way. There's a lot of stuff. So let's unbox something. I'm not going to muck around. It all has to be done. This bucket here is in the road. It looks like it's going to fall off soon. I think it's just got some scrap metal in it. So let's unbox it, see what we find, see how we process it. Hopefully nothing gets thrown out. It's quite heavy. It's obviously just had things thrown into it from when we were cleaning out some of the storage sheds. It looks, just glancing on the top, it looks to be mostly scrap metal bits and probably some stuff that needs a bit of processing. So let's tip it out. There we go. What an assortment. It's probably just from some of the buckets that were lying around the backyard at the shop that would have been just random scrap metal. I can see there's bits of copper that I've taken off things. There's power packs that have just had the cord chopped off. They're fairly heavy ones. They're going to have a transformer in them. So let's just sort the pile out and see what sort of value we get. I mean, it looks rubbish to most people, but us scrappers know there's going to be some value here. There'll be a few bits and pieces I might keep, like the plumbing fittings, the garden hose fittings, but we've got some copper pipe, some brass fittings. Don't know what half of this is, so we'll get a magnet, we'll get a file, we'll zoom the camera in a little bit and we'll have a good look at it all and I'll show you how I sort it out. Okay, this video will probably turn out to be a good one for beginner scrappers, just on how we sort stuff. Most scrappers' favourite tools, I use a microwave magnet, and I've got a round file here. Round files seem to cut very nicely and it's easy to tell. You could use an angle grinder, then you've got to pick the thing up and down and charge it up and plug it in and all that sort of stuff. Whereas files, super easy, and you get to feel with the file. You feel how soft the metal is, which helps you decipher sometimes, because copper is very soft, so is aluminium, whereas stainless steel has a real harshness. It's really quite hard and you can feel that with the file. So I think a file is a good tool. That's clearly copper. This piece here will be brass, standard plumbing fitting, and we can see the yellow of brass there. The piece at the end might be brass as well. Let's see if this garden hose will come off. Oh, yep. So we'll put that in the gardening section in our shed here. It might be useful. This part here, check with a magnet. Not magnetic, so there's a fair chance it's brass as well. Yep, definitely. So we need to take those apart. We'll have a pile for that and we'll deal with that later. A fair bit of bulk in this pile is these transformers. And as long as they're the proper transformer type and they've got some good weight to them, I think they're worth processing. Any that are really light, and I don't think there will be any in here, because I've obviously sorted these at one stage, but any power packs or wall warts that are very light, they're going to be a switch mode power supply. And what you get there is a little circuit board with some parts and a very tiny transformer, and they're really not worth pulling apart. I throw them straight in the e-waste to go to the transfer station here. But these old ones have a nice chunky transformer in there. I think it's well worth giving them a hit with a hammer. We'll do that a bit later. So I'll make a pile for those ones. You know instantly when you pick them up that they're going to have a good transformer in them. There's another white one that's feeling a little light, but we might break him open and just do a comparison perhaps. Here's one that's already been cracked open, and you can see there is a few other parts, a couple of diodes, there's a rectifier, a capacitor, and of course the pins, but it's a decent little transformer, a fair bit of weight, and they add up very quickly. So I'll get my clippers and we'll clean that one up and just chop the casing off, chop the pins off. It doesn't matter if we leave a little bit of wire, and it doesn't matter if there's a couple of components on there. I think it'll still go in as transformer. As far as the scrapyards go, some people twist the pins off. Even though they're silver, they are going to be brass pins. They're actually nickel plated. I don't worry about them at all. I don't think it's worthwhile, but depending how much time you've got on your hands, you can save the brass. There's little bits of insulated, or not insulated, lacquered copper wire here out of something. I think that's actually out of a microphone magnetron. microwave magnetron. We'll keep that. That can go in our number 2 copper. There's a few other bits here as well. So we're just going to sort at this stage. Get the power packs out. I'm not sure what this is. It looks like it's a little pump here, pond and fountain pump. It's going to be a little motor with a pump inside a plastic casing. You could probably get away with putting that in as it is, just straight in with electric motors. We might just pull it apart. No, it looks like it's sealed. There's no easy screws to get it apart. I'll hit it with a hammer later and we'll just have a look what's inside it. But you could probably nearly just put that straight in with your electric motors. Okay, we've got some little sockets. That's non-magnetic and definite brass, nice yellow colour. I'll have to get some buckets ready to put these. I will just make piles along the table and then we can weigh them up at the end and see how much value there was in one bucket of stuff. So what I think we might do is we'll make some piles. Things that have some brass on them, we'll decide later whether it's worth stripping them out. So we'll have a dirty brass pile. For example, these air fittings are mostly brass, but not completely. There's a steel clip there. It's not going to come apart. But also we've obviously got a hose clamp and a bit of hose. So I'll just sort this pile into categories for now. I'm not sure what this is. It looks like it could even be lead. It's got a fair bit of weight to it. And it's very, very soft and silver. And it won't be magnetic, but let's try it so you beginner people know. Again, like I was saying before, with the softness of the metal, lead is super soft to the extent that you can actually make a dent in it with your thumbnail. So a file bites into it so easily, and that's something that if you were hitting it with a grinder you wouldn't feel that, but with a file you can feel the softness. So definitely a piece of lead there. Better start a pile for lead. This looks like a bit of copper pipe, and it's definitely copper, but it has something in it. Feels like it's got a spring in it, so I reckon that's maybe part of a heating element or something. So it's actually dirty copper. We'll put that aside to be looked at a bit later. This piece is, we'll hit it with a file. It looks like brass. I'll better check. Yep, certainly not magnetic. It's got some stuff on the inside. I think it's just a bit of corrosion, because sometimes things can be brass plated. It looks like it actually is filled with something that's not brass. Yeah, so that's definitely going to go in our irony brass or dirty brass pile for now. Same with a padlock. It's almost impossible to get pure brass out of that, because not only do you have the shackle, and of course it's locked, but even if you could unlock it, you can't get the shackle out. And even if you can, it's going to have little springs and steel pins in here. So unless padlocks are good enough for me to keep and sell, they'll pretty well just go in the irony brass. This big piece, non-magnetic, but there's definitely no yellow there, and that feels quite hard. You can hear it. So I think that's stainless steel. However, it has got a bit of a cable on this end with a bit of copper. So it's not clean stainless steel. It's got a fitting inside as well. So we'll put that aside for the moment, work out what to do with that. This looks like it's out of a refrigeration unit. That's actually brass, the outer one. It's had copper pipes, or someone's ground it before, so it's brass and copper. But copper isn't an impurity in brass, because brass is actually an alloy of copper. So we can actually put that in our clean brass bin, even though it actually isn't pure brass. But the contamination is more valuable than what the actual brass is. And it's all of the one, so it can go in as clean brass. Cutlery. Quite often cutlery is what they call EPNS, which is electroplated nickel silver. Usually it says on it. But the bottom line is that EPNS is actually, unless it's magnetic, some of them can be just chromed steel. But if it's non-magnetic, it can go in with your normal brass. If you file it, you don't always get the yellowness of brass because it's an alloy of copper and nickel, I think. and I think maybe some zinc. But certainly it's if it's non-magnetic, it can go in with your brass. You check with your scrapyard maybe. They don't actually know what EPNS is from experience, but my yard did take it as brass when I brought it down. Okay, we've got little switches. That's going to be mostly brass, I would say. Non-magnetic all over. Definitely brass there. Yep, that's all brass. If it's a cute little switch, if it was in better nick and operational, I would actually keep it, but they can just go in our clean brass. Oh, there's all sorts of fittings here. That feels like it's got lead in it, just from the weight, and it's fairly soft, but it's got brass on that end. So that's going to go with our dirty brass for now. Wheel weights off cars are mostly lead, but they do have a steel clip, and you'll know that because it's magnetic. Lead is really easy to separate because it melts at such a low temperature. I keep all these wheel weights aside, and one day when I've got a fire going, I just put them in a pot and they melt out really easily. You can scoop the little metal brackets off the top and then just pour a lead ingot. So I keep them separate. Yards may even offer a price for car wheel weights if you get a lot of them, but I think they're pretty easy to purify. That's just brass. Part of a door lock here, obviously steel, that part, but most door locks have the latch part is brass. Sometimes they're pretty easy to get apart. That one, for the little bit of brass we're going to get, I'm not going to bother. They can just, we'd nearly get away with putting that in the irony brass. You just got to be careful how much steel you put in with it. I might just put it in the vise and bend it back and forth a couple of times to break the big plate off. Otherwise the yard might say it's too dirty. But we'll make decisions on that stuff towards the end. This piece is brass, that end. And the pipe looks stainless steel. It's non-magnetic. Put that with the irony brass for the moment. This piece is solid copper. It's actually a large soldering iron. We just have to get this steel piece out. Generally, I don't try and take these apart because the steel rod usually goes right inside and it's really hard to get it out. But being such a nice lump of copper, to go as number 2 copper, I think it's worth just cutting down there with a grinder and getting the steel rod out. We'll keep that separate for the moment too. Another one of these refrigeration pieces, so mostly brass, can go with our clean brass. A large nail, that will be magnetic, so it's a galvanized nail. It's thick enough to go in with a heavy steel, or I might have a use for it. Another door lock assembly. There's too much steel here for that to go as dirty brass. There's only 2 little pieces of it. I don't think it's worth getting apart. There's 1, 2 screws, or they're rivets. They're screws, but they're well and truly rusted. They can just go in with our steel shred. We have some sort of bracket here, and there's a fair bit of brass there. It has got an impurity, which might come out. And of course this bracket has to come off, which I think it just about will. There we go. So that can go in our heavy steel. It's thick enough. And we'll sort that one out a bit later. A little fitting here that is not yellow. It's not brass, but it's non-magnetic, so that will be stainless steel. This is the little weight off the top of a pressure cooker. It's probably brass, although the little top bit's not. But it has got some sort of fitting inside. We'll see if we can get that out. Oh, there it goes, right across the shed. So that's clean enough to go just as, yeah, it's, once we take this bit off, it's all brass. Now we have a gas line here. It has brass fittings on the end. The regulator is going to be a die cast, but it can go as cast aluminium. However, it's got a spring in it and a diaphragm and other fittings, so it can't go as clean alley. It would have to go as dirty alley. It's an old hose and it's quite hard, so we can't use that. It wouldn't be safe. We'll put that with our dirty brass for now, and we'll probably just cut the ends off. This one is also a gas line. We don't know how safe that's going to be. Again, I think I'll just cut the ends off. This looks like a washer. It actually looks like it might be copper, like some sort of old gasket. Yes, it is copper, but it will have some sort of insulating material in it. It feels like it's double thickness. So we'd probably have to, I think we could put that in our burnt copper and number 2 copper. A little bracket here of something. It looks like a speed control from an old mower or something like that. Non-magnetic. That's brass, so nickel plated brass. A piece of flat here, which is probably stainless steel, non-magnetic. Very hard. You can hear that, can't you? You hear when it's hard. So yep, definitely stainless steel there. A large air valve from probably a truck tyre. It will be mostly brass. It's got a steel plate around the end here. Yeah, that's all brass. It'll have a valve in the end. I know it's been removed, but it's not worth trying to get that steel off. So irony brass there. I have a little bit more copper. Yeah, I think these were the coils out of microwave magnetron. So they are lacquered, so they have to go as number 2 copper. This is a solenoid from a washing machine. It feels like it's seized up. They can just go straight in as electric motors. Same as transformers, same thing. This looks like a brass fitting here. It's actually got a ball in it. It's actually a valve from one of those hand pumps, but it'll be all brass. Now a battery terminal. These terminals are normally copper, and you can tell instantly it's soft and it's pink, so that's copper. Copper wire as well. There will be some solder in there, but they can go as number 2 copper, which we've got a bit of a pile happening. A little bit of aluminium. I can tell immediately it's super light. It's very soft and it's non-magnetic. I don't think I have a pile for aluminium just yet. This bracket here, non-magnetic. Oh, it's actually plastic. Looks steel, but it's plastic. Or looks metal, but it's plastic. Another one of these door lock things. That's the bracket of something. It feels very hard. I think that's stainless steel. Oh, magnetic, so it's actually normal steel. Have to go with our shred, it's not very thick. A lump of this looks like lead. Very soft again, non-magnetic. Where's our pile of lead? Over there. A plate here from something that's probably going to be copper. Yep, number 2 copper. Doorknobs are normally brass, these old ones. Yep. But they quite often have a steel insert or a screw through them, so it's dirty brass. A piece of maybe more brass. No, that's copper. Fairly thick piece of copper. Plumbing fitting here, which is galvanized, but it does have a brass fitting that end. We'll take that apart, but we'll put that in our dirty brass for now. This one looks like all brass. Let's see. Yeah, plenty of yellow there. Yep, that's a clean piece of brass. I don't know what that's out of. It's slightly magnetic, so that's going to be stainless steel, and the end's probably going to be brass. Yeah. So we might just put that in the vise. We'll put that with our dirty brass to process in a minute. This is it's a bit dirty. It's the brass bung from a old fuel can. It's obviously been in the dirt for a while. So yeah, that will be brass. Definitely. This is for making a wire cable loop. It must be stainless steel, I would think. Oh no, it's actually brass. That surprises me. I thought it might have been stainless. But it's soft enough and it's yellow, so that's brass. Now some other bits and pieces. I'd say these have all been put in a bucket because they're non-magnetic and I hadn't got back to sorting them out. That's very soft. So it's interesting. I think that's actually lead. It looks like a screw-on cap, but it's very soft and I can bend it. So that's lead. Okay, let's finish this up. These jobs tend to take ages and I shouldn't film it all. You'll be bored silly. However, some of the newbies might be keen to work out how to sort metal. That's a stainless steel. You can hear how hard it was again. Where's my stainless steel pile? There. This bolt, as chances are it's stainless steel. It's actually a very nice bolt. I think I'll keep that. Too good to scrap. That's nice and soft copper. Okay guys, in the interests of not letting this video run right into next week, I've done 5 times speed on this section, and I've also muted the audio because you don't want to hear me sound like a happy chipmunk, I'm sure. So basically just sorting out. I find it very therapeutic. I really enjoy the process actually, and watching the piles of good stuff all gradually accumulate. Alright, I'll just tidy these last few bits up and we'll have a look at our piles and see what we got. Okay guys, I spared you the boredom of watching me pull things apart and clean stuff up. Basically we've explained what we've found and I've sorted it now into groups, and we have our trusty notepad out. We'll quickly scan along here. That's just going in my shred steel bucket to dump out at a local transfer station, including the outer of this gas line. I think it's stainless steel, but it's got a rubber pipe in it, so not going to muck around with that. That's our number 2 copper. The large soldering iron head was the best bit by far, quite weighty. A little bit of stainless steel. The brass, I cleaned some of it up. I left some of it. My advice to you guys is, it depends how much time you've got in your hands, but basically pick the easy stuff. That's the bottom line. Things that are just, undo one bolt or pull out one pin or cut something off with a hacksaw quickly, just to get your nice clean brass. Don't waste too much time. Dirty brass is still actually paying $2.50 a kilo, so I'm not mucking around. This only took me about 10 minutes to sort out, so that's going in our irony brass bin. Here we have a little bit of lead. This piece is not technically lead. It's actually a white metal bearing, like a bushing. It's quite an old piece. White metal is an alloy. Sometimes it's lead based, sometimes it's tin based. This is fairly heavy. I think it's lead based, and it can contain copper and I think antimony. So you'd probably get away with putting that in lead, particularly because it's heavy and soft and silver in colour. I might separate it in that I'm probably keeping a bit of lead now to melt, because lead isn't worth very much to sell to the scrapyards, but for the purposes of this we've included it in our lead price. There's all our clean brass. I didn't even mention these few bits in my list. We just have some normal domestic aluminium, a little bit of die cast, or it would go as cast aluminium. This bit initially I thought was stainless steel, but it was rather soft when I filed it again, so it'll be a die cast. And this would have to go into dirty cast aluminium because it does have impurities like a spring and a diaphragm in it, and it's not worth pulling apart for the low price of aluminium. So I didn't write any of that down. Our transformers, I just cracked the cases open pretty well like cracking eggs. It's just one little hit with a hammer and they fall apart. The white one was the lightest and it still did have a decent sized transformer in it. So the transformers weighed up okay. They can go with electric motors. They're much the same price. Well, they are the same price. The pump here, I cracked one end off and it's all full of a resin, but I think they would still accept that as an electric motor. I did take the fitting off one end. So they will all go as transformers or electric motors, depending on how your yard deals with it. This stuff just goes as heavy melt steel. This piece, even though it was stainless steel and it's non-magnetic, it does have impurities. There's a bit of a cable, bit of copper wire going through the middle of it. I don't know what the metal is inside it. I don't know if the yards have a price for dirty stainless steel, but I'm not going to start saving that in separate buckets, so that's just going to go in with my normal steel. And the only other stuff we had left was just some usable things, some springs, some clamps, some nuts and bolts and hardware. And these 2 airline fittings, they can certainly be sold rather than just go in the dirty brass. A nice stainless steel bolt. So yeah, just some hardware that I will either use or sell. And as far as our rubbish goes, we had a bucket here under the counter. That's all that's going to landfill. Just the sweepings off the bench, the little end pieces off that waterproof pump, and a few little bits and pieces. So hardly anything going to landfill. Let's have a look at the notepad. We have a scrap price of almost $35. Just from what I've been through, you can see the prices there. These prices were current. The last price list I had was October 2022. I was earlier in the year, I was getting $8 a kilo for brass, so it's back to $6.60. Copper's down a little bit. Stainless steel's actually come up from when I sold it last time. But as you can see, transformers, I think I got $1.20 at one stage. So there's a bit of room. Oh, and the heavy melt steel, I was getting 500 a tonne when I sold mine, which was 50 cents a kilo. So even at these slightly lower prices, nearly $35 worth in that one little bucket. Plus we got a little bit of hardware. Hardly any rubbish going to the tip. That's how I sort random scrap metal. I will now distribute this to all my bins. And that's it. Got to give me a thumbs up for getting another bucket of junk out of my shed. So there we go, guys. Another bucket of scrap sorted from my shed. Making videos for you guys helps me keep going because I've got to finish it. I've got to process it. I've got to do my list. It takes a bit longer, sure, rather than not filming it. But it's so easy to walk away and get distracted and do another job. Whereas if I'm actually filming it, I'll say, I've got to finish that video because I want to get it up tonight. So you guys are helping keep me motivated. Hopefully you're getting a little bit out of this and not getting too bored. I think the beginner scrappers will probably enjoy it because every bucket's different, and helping you recognize things and helping you learn how to pick what metals what very easily, helping you make decisions on what to scrap and what not to scrap. Of course, it depends on your situation, but hopefully you find them useful. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll do another bucket of it soon. See you in the next video. Bye for now.